Alright, today I'm going to be going over to the big box. But before I do that, I'm going to go over a little couple things on my roll cart that I missed the last time I was here. One of the first ones being this little timer. It kind of moves around. Sometimes I'll stick it on the lift or under a hood on the car or something like that. But I'm a flagging tech, so I like to make sure that I'm within the labor time that I'm needing to do that and not spending too much stuff. Additionally, if I'm doing a diagnosis, it's good to know that I just kind of set that for like an hour. And if I'm reaching like the 45-minute mark, I need to go ahead and ask for more time to continue looking at it or let the customer know what we found at that point. Some of the things over here, like my borescope camera, I typically keep it up here. It was charging the last time, but I usually just put this little lead in the back. Really nice, keeps that head from getting smashed under something. And then I have some extra heads here for my my torch. It kind of changes the flame pattern and makes it a little hotter or a little more focused depending on what I'm doing. Over here on the side of my cart, I forgot to mention these clips were clipped onto another car, but if I'm doing like an intake manifold and I put paper towels on there, I like to clip that so I don't put that back on. Guess why I did that. And then also, like, if I'm disconnecting some electrical connectors and I left them unplugged for some testing or something, I'll stick that on the steering wheel so somebody doesn't try to turn the vehicle on with that stuff unplugged. And then over on the other side of my cart, I basically got my rags. I just kind of stick them right there. And I can use those shop rags pretty much anytime I need them, and I just restock them anytime I get slow. And then I keep my used gloves in both of these boxes. Typically I'll have one box of new gloves and then one box of used gloves, and I'll try to go through the used ones before I start using some new ones. Or I wear a fresh pair of gloves on my hand, and then I'll put a used pair on top of it. If I'm working on like suspension or something that I know is oily, I'm end up tossing them. That's a good strategy for that. And then I have a clipboard that I keep my RO that I'm currently working on. Just so I can do that. And some of the stuff in my box in here, I just got these from Matco. They're like kind of an extendable oil filter wrench, and then they clamp down really tight. I'd originally lost my pair, but then I figured out that somebody had borrowed it and just didn't put it back for a few weeks. So I thought it was missing, but I ended up getting that back. But this is a kind of nice tool that so far I've been using it, and it's been pretty awesome. Then I got my drill back. As you can see, I've already been using it. That's my favorite drill to use because it's a lot faster than my little one. But yeah, it's been really awesome having that back because it's been gone for about a week or so, and I use that pretty frequently. And then I added some extra little swivels onto my tools. And I needed some drill, some exhaust, so I got some carbide bits and this little straight cutter because I didn't really have any room. And then added that swivel to that too. And now I use it for cleaning up some surfaces with that little wire wheel. And we'll move over to the big box. Yeah, so my setup's pretty normal. I have my TV there as my monitor, and it's really useful for wiring diagrams. I can really see everything that I'm doing. I have my jump box that I usually just keep charged with this giant mess of cables. We got our shop PC that we use there for programming cars, and just generally keeping track of any shop stuff. I've got my little adjustable wrenches over here. Not adjustable wrenches. They're used for my my die grinders and cutters for taking the heads off of that stuff, and some extra key rings. I had that little giant wrench magnet on my toolbox, my roll cart, but I went ahead and moved it up here because the end broke off over there, as you can see, and it just kind of looked ugly, and I can't get replacement parts for that, so went ahead and did that. Another thing too, when I'm on my lunch breaks, I have a bunch of these timers just kind of sitting everywhere. Typically when I'm making estimates, the reason I have two keyboards is I have my main keyboard for my PC, and then I have my other keyboard that's just run off of Bluetooth to go over here onto my my little tablet, and we'll use that to make estimates a lot of the times. I love this giant USB hub over here. Awesome for keeping all my devices charged because I end up having to plug in like 5 or 6 lights at the end of the day, and that's really useful for that. And I have my wireless charger over here. It's really slow, but a lot of times I'm just setting my phone down for the day, and that'll kind of keep it charged. But otherwise I use my fast charger, and I just kind of move my cable wherever I want it. I've got my little staple remover. Kind of cool. It's this little dragon. My service advisors like putting staples in the middle of the sheet, and I really hate that. I mean, you can't flip open a paper and then they also move around and the pages fly off, so I tend to just take that guy out and put the staple in the proper location up over there. And as you can see, I got a lot of notepads everywhere. I write notes constantly, put them on our rows, or if I'm making estimates or needing stuff for wiring diagrams and things like that, I tend to use them for those. Then I have my Zeus over here. This is my personal Zeus. We have another Zeus for the shop, but I had a Virus for the longest time. I think probably about like 5 or 6 years. And then when I moved here to Strand's Garage, that was about when the Zeus was coming out, and they discontinued software updates for my my Virus, so I went ahead and upgraded it. And I'm so glad I did, because this one's so much faster, and I really love the Snap-on platform. It works really, really well for collecting data off of cars. It's just really fantastic. And I mean, I've used a lot of other scan tools, but so far this one's been my favorite. And I did get a 100-year anniversary one, so that's kind of cool. Sometimes Snap-on's touchscreen will just randomly quit working, especially if the temperature gets like above 100 degrees outside or so, and you leave your scan tool sitting on the steering wheel. The touchscreen will just kind of become unresponsive, but if you plug a mouse into it, it'll work. So it's happened frequently enough. I just went ahead and got a Bluetooth mouse and clipped it onto here, and I just use that. I don't really ever use the stylus. I tend to just use my finger to touch it. And don't worry, the screen is not cracked. There are screen protectors that they make for these, and I tend to wait until it's got cracks all over the place before I replace that. And then I've got my my tool engraver right here. I engrave a lot of my tools, pretty much all of them, with my name on them, because I don't want them to be walking off on people's boxes, or if I do find a tool in someone's box and it has my name on it, I know it's mine. There's a little stamp that I use to, if we ordered parts or if I had an estimate on something, I tend to just stamp it so that we know when I did that, if I'm doing paper stuff. But I tend to do everything digital on our inspection sheets, so I tend to not use that as much as I used to, but that is a tool that that is good for documentation. I got my little decoration here that came from the holidays, and then just a lock, and then I have this. It's a little Bluetooth OBD. It's, I think, from ELM. That one's pretty nice if you're needing to check readiness monitors. You can just pair that to your phone and then just keep the readiness monitor display up on it, and it refreshes all the time, so you can tell right when those are ready. But it tends, if we have to drive a vehicle, sometimes we'll go drive it for, like, to go pick up some lunch or something, and then during the test drive, we're just checking those readiness monitors, trying to get it through those cycles. Up here I have some extra little shelves. I keep a little Sharpie there, but I don't really use that. That was just supplied by one of our vendors. And then I have my coffee mug, and then I have some extra masks and some little extra bags. I have a bunch of thank you cards that I write to customers, especially customers who spend a lot of money, just to let them know that we appreciate them coming to us. Got some extra keys. We replaced all of the locks on this toolbox, which I think there are like 9 or 10 of them. And so I still have all of those. We need to return them to Snap-on. I got my little trash can here that I just kind of throw pieces of paper on. Got a bottle opener, got some terminal pin removers. I don't really use those after I got a big set, but they still come in handy every once in a while, especially for some pins where you're just trying to jam it in there to take it out. That works really well, because those are pretty cheap, and I don't really care about them. That little ruler there is actually used to used to measure U-joints, the thickness of that, so you can get the correct size. I think Spicer makes that, and it's been pretty useful so far. It avoids a lot of incorrect parts getting over here. As you can see, our parts suppliers must think I'm stressed because I keep giving me these little stress management things, but I don't really use them. I just kind of have them there as decorations. Then I got all my little accessories. I just kind of throw them up here for the day, and I have all my flashlights charging over there, and I tend to have 2 of them. Sometimes I have 2 or 3. And that's just because I run through my flashlights pretty much all day, and if one dies in the middle of while I'm working on something, I can just come up here and grab another one, and then keep going. Alright, so we're going to go to the top drawer up here. A lot of the stuff in this drawer are mostly just timing tools. It's mostly because there's nowhere else to put them other than the lockers, and I like using the lockers for kind of some more readily accessible stuff. This is an oil pressure test kit, and a lot of these test kits I added extra stuff to them. In fact, I think this one I cut out the middle section and just added some stuff. So I've got some exhaust pressure stuff. I've got just regular oil adapters, and then this one you can attach to the bottom of a filter if you need to do an oil pressure check on a GM. You don't have to take the sensors out. You can actually just go do it at the oil filter. And then I have a bunch of little bungs here for O2 sensors. If you remove them, you can put them in there just to kind of block that hole off. Especially if you're doing testing. Sometimes we'll do things like that. And then just a couple of adapters and fittings and stuff like that I found kind of useful. You'll find with a lot of these kits, you got to put everything back in the specific order, and that's why I hate plastic cases. So a lot of times I will just cut things out in order for things to kind of fit correctly. Oh, mother. Yeah. All right, here we go. So I think these are just Volkswagen timing tools. I do a lot of Volkswagens, and these are, I don't think I've used these actually. I think it's whenever I'm about to sell a job, occasionally I'll just go ahead and buy the tool, get it ready beforehand, and then I can go ahead and just do the job whenever it comes in. I haven't used this one either. I bought this one originally to do a job, and the customer had already approved it, and then they backed out last second. So I ended up buying a tool I didn't need. But if I'm that close to needing it, then I don't think it's a bad thing that I have it ready to go. I do a lot of diesels. We haven't gotten as many recently, but this is pretty much all the stuff that you'll need for that. The Ford 6.0 kit. And then the best thing to do is use the IDS system, Ford's scan tool system. And I think I added a couple of extra things in here, like the IPR testing equipment to manually supply oil pressure to it. That's pretty useful, and it works correctly. You're able to find problems with that, so definitely a good purchase on that one. Ford 6.0s are difficult to work on if you've never done it, but once you kind of figure out all their problems, you can figure out what's going on pretty quickly. That's a timing tool I had when I was working at Mercedes. Some of those engines have some the variable valve system, the sprockets on the front. You basically have to replace those, and this is a good tool to go ahead and hold that, and it cuts the time down from, like, I think you get paid maybe like 5 or 6 hours. I'm not exactly sure, but it cuts it down to around 2 hours or so, and it's a really useful tool for that. I have a cylinder leakage tester here. I kind of use the picoscope for in-cylinder testing, so I don't use this as much anymore, but a lot of my coworkers still like doing cylinder leakage tests like this, and I still have it, so I keep it in there. And I also keep a lot of extra, like, compression test hoses and things like that, because I still use it. This kit's actually broken, but I use it to keep for spare parts for the replacement that I got. Because even though this is a really good tool, people will use it incorrectly and they'll end up breaking stuff on it. So that's good to have some extra backup things. These are some stubby bits from Mac. I don't use them a whole lot, but whenever I need to drill manifolds on, like, Chevy trucks, this is a really awesome kit, and it works with my electric drill, so I can actually fit it. I cut a couple of these bits to fit the exact size, so even shorter than what they are now. Just to get into that manifold area and kind of either start the drill bit in order to get an extractor in there and pull it out. Really useful kit, and I don't let anybody else touch these. These are not a situation where I want them to be dull when I need them. I got flip socket sets. You're gonna need those for a lot of those plastic lug nuts that they put on stuff, or little covers. I believe this is a hole saw cutting kit. Yeah. I do that, people might get mad at me, but I cut holes in the top of this or to route wires, and then I just use a bunch of these extra little grommets they give you. As you can see, I didn't use them on that one or that side, but yeah, that's kind of what I used them for. In my old toolbox, I drilled holes on the top in order to route wires through it, and then I just put the grommets in there afterwards. But that's originally what I bought it for, and it works pretty well. I think I just have like a master bit set in here. This is honestly just for replacement, like spare parts for stuff that I need. But I keep it in here because occasionally I might just go bring my my little drill with me, and I don't want to bring a whole screwdriver set or something. But I don't really use that as much as I used to. Man, sometimes I don't even know what's in these cases. Oh, right. Yeah, if you're putting clutches inside of transmissions, a lot of times a flywheel, they'll give you one of these for free. So I go ahead and just mark them whenever I do that, and then I stick them in here in case we need them later. And I think I have a whole bag of them, but this one right here is kind of where I do that. And then I actually just have a clutch alignment tool master kit, and this works a lot better. I use that a lot more because it just kind of works properly. And this is a timing tool for 2.0 VW. I've used this one once. It kind of has a lot of the same similar tools as the other one. In fact, I think a lot of them are duplicates of that same one. But you know, I think this one has the extra 1.8 engine on it as well. In this kit, a lot of times if I end up upgrading my kit, I'll keep the old one, or I'll sell it to another technician, or something like that, to try to get my return on that stuff. And then I have an exhaust back pressure kit right here again. Most of the time now I use pressure transducers, so I really don't need to do that. But it's still there in case I need it. And then I have the Ford Mazda timing tools. If you've ever dealt with that one has the crankshaft. When it's mated on there, you have to make sure that you put a timing tool in there if you're going to be taking the crankshaft pulley off. So you put this pin, one of these, basically you screw it into the back, and it's going to hold the balance shaft, and it's going to make sure that the crankshaft doesn't spin, because the timing is held specifically with that. It's not, it doesn't do its own individual timing like sprockets to hold everything in place. It's actually held by the pressure of that crank pulley on there. At Pep Boy, someone actually, one of my coworkers had left a wrench on there, or his ratcheting wrench on it, and then started the vehicle and loosened that crank pulley up, and pretty much destroyed that engine because it threw it at a time and bent all the valves. This is one of the kits that I made at Toyota. I basically just hollowed this out when I had my torque wrench, and then I just got all the wheel lock keys that I needed for that. Toyota has a master kit at the dealer, but a lot of those were lost, so I just made my own. I think that was total maybe like $300. Each one of those is like $25 or something. So it was kind of expensive, but ended up working correctly. These are more Ford timing tools, I think, for the 5.4 engine. It's basically going to hold it in place, and you can do that. After you've done that engine a few times, the timing components on it, you really don't need this kit anymore, but it's still useful, especially if you're taking the sprockets off on the very top. This thing will basically like hold the tensioner. I think it presses it down so that you can go ahead and loosen it enough to get that out of there. And that actually works pretty well. You got to be kind of careful with it, but other than that, really awesome kit. And then they did not give me a case or anything with it. They just threw it in a bag and said, here you go. So I had to kind of fit it into a random case that I had. And then this is the BMW N20 timing tool, by the way, if you're removing the sprockets on there. The little reluctor wheels on there are not held in by anything. They just free spin. So I had to remove one of them, and then I accidentally moved that little thing. So I had to get this tool in order to put it back into time, just because I was doing a valve cover gasket, and I was putting it back on, and the little solenoid on the very front for that center bolt, the tip of it, I snapped it off somehow. And before starting the engine, I was like, we really can't start it without that piece attached, because it could be something like critically important. So I removed the bolt, and then that thing went out of time, and I was just like, oh shit. And so I had to get that kit to do that. But it worked perfectly well, and the vehicle ran fine afterwards. So really no big deal. Sometimes you gotta play a little Tetris here to get things to fit kind of correctly back in there, but not that bad. Yeah, over here I do wheel bearings a lot over on our giant machine here, our bearing press, and this is really useful for removing those big O-rings, not O-rings, big giant snap rings. These are really strong, and get those out kind of very easily, even rusted ones. It does a good job of taking that out. This is my drum brake service kit. I kind of combined it with a bunch of other stuff, so I think this is Astro Pneumatic, and all the tools that had are in there. And I have these special Mac ones for separating and kind of pulling them back together, or you're not supposed to pull them back together, but that's what I do with it. This will basically hold some of the springs, kind of like puts tension on it, and then you can kind of pull really tightly with that. I have this here that's for spreading that. If you know how to do service brakes, like drum brakes, you'll kind of be able to tell what these are used for. But it's a little difficult to explain without some kind of diagram there, so you'll just have to take my word that those are pretty useful. And then I have this kit that I used to use, or this special tool. It just kind of got two sides on it. for removing those little springs. I don't think I use it as much anymore. I actually prefer using pliers, but it's part of the kit, so that's what I just threw in there. You got a little adjustable thing here. I got these, you know, these pliers that I really don't ever use, but they claim they're useful. And then I have this measuring tool that I use to measure the interior of the drum. And then basically you can just set this outside one for the shoes, and it'll be a perfect size every time. I typically will just back it off about like 2 to 3 millimeters and then put it back in. And I have to only do very, very minor adjustments, if any, but otherwise it's pretty much perfect every time. So that cuts down on a lot of wasted time on that. This is a thread file restoring kit. Basically, if you screw up the threads on a bolt or something, you can use these to kind of file them down, and they come with different sizes, so you can get the exact threads you need without damaging it too much. I have used that. It's kind of, I wish they were a little sharper, but it's probably good. It's a very slow moving tool, but it will get everything kind of restored back to a point where you can put a nut back on it without too much trouble. I have this giant ruler here. I mostly use the millimeter side of it. I use it for air suspension vehicles when I need to measure the ride height on stuff. This is perfect because it's I use it on our alignment machine, and keeps a nice level surface to make sure that it's all correct. This is actually my power steering pulley remover. This kit is really, really fantastic. Out of all the power steering pullers, this one is the one that works correctly, and it's going to give you the least amount of trouble on that. This is just a, they're like diamond coated terminal cleaning kits. They're round, so it's not exactly what I wanted. I should probably get a different one with the normal pin cleaning stuff, and they're not small enough to fit in a lot of things, so I kind of regret buying that as much, but it's still useful, has its purpose, but I think I probably would have liked a bigger kit that included more things. This is removing the rings on my impacts, those little rubber ones. If Snap-on doesn't have the equipment on there, you know, the parts, I'll do it myself, and I'll just do that. This I thought was going to be a lot more useful. So basically you put that shank into some kind of drill, and then it's an angle drill that you can fit in a lot of really tight spaces. The only thing I really hate is that they have their own proprietary little bits on here. I kind of wish it was a chuck, but that's what they have, and they're not exactly the sharpest things in the world. So I gotta say I kind of regret buying this, but it still does work. It's just it doesn't work as well as I would have liked it to. So that's just really, really annoying. Yeah, I guess I just have a little tiny screwdriver. That's my my electric plastic welder. Already saw that on my other tool review, Toolbox tour. These are, you're gonna kind of probably be surprised by this, but we do work on everything. This is a carburetor adjustment screwdriver set. If I can get that open. Doing this one-handed, give me a sec. You'll have to take my word on it. It's basically got a bunch of carburetor adjusting screwdrivers, so they come in a bunch of different little tiny sizes. Pretty useful. I don't adjust a whole lot of carburetors, but when you do, nice to have stuff that's actually working correctly. This is an orifice tube remover set. If you work on a lot of Dodge vehicles, this is one where you're going to probably need it. Works really well. I've had basically, I think out of 10 of them maybe that I've done, I've had like one not work. But if that's the case, you typically got to replace that that whole line anyway. So typically before I'm removing an orifice tube, I'm going to let the customer know that, hey, there is a chance we're probably not going to be able to get that out. So you need to be prepared for that because, you know, we don't want to have a potential issue. This is my little mini plier set. This is a kind of crappy set of pliers, but it still works correctly. And then I found this one in the, I think in like an underbody panel that was sitting in there. Just comes with a bunch of these different sizes. I do use them every once in a while. I tend to use these the most, and I'll use that to kind of just grab something and pull on it. These, I wish the jaws were a little bit bigger, but I really can't complain. I think this was maybe like 20 bucks or something. And it's mildly useful, has its reason for being here, but if I found a kit with some better ones, I would probably do that, and also probably less than 100 bucks, because I really don't use them enough to buy a really good set. I tend to get the cheapest stuff I can and then replace them if they break or just don't work correctly. But I do kind of a frugal person, so I like finding what works and for a good price. These are little mini screwdrivers. They work really well. This kind of pivots on that, and I use those all the time for kind of little bitty electronic stuff. And if you're doing like your repairing your laptop or your phone or something like that, these are pretty useful. But I use them a lot on interior computer pieces or just disassembling things. This is a pretty useful tool. It's extremely expensive. I think it's like $450 or something like that. But it's really, really helpful. Basically, you put that on the end of your bolt with screwed up threads, and it will fix it. And let me tell you, it does work, but this is so expensive. This is like a really, really excessive option to take care of that, but it does work. I've used it before. I've used it multiple times, and it's really awesome. They gave me a bunch of these, so I just have them in my box, and I can just kind of pass them out whenever somebody needs one. That's my digital caliper gauge. That one's kind of more precise, but otherwise I'm typically just going to be using my plastic Harbor Freight one, because as far as I can tell, this one measures it really, really accurately. Even though it's cheap, it tends to do the job correctly. And for most of the things I'm measuring, like hoses or bolts or something like that, this is going to do a pretty decent job. But if I need it to be exactly correct, I'll use that one. And then I have a bunch of AC stuff here. We do have a bunch of these little packs of kind of just various things on our AC machines, but I like having my own because people tend to move them around or lose them or put dirty ones back in, so I like to have one that's not tampered with and completely clean too. Then I have a bunch of little valve cores for the AC kits as well that I keep in here. These we have some for the shop, but again, I like having them organized, clean, somewhere I know where they're at. It's really helpful. I have a little magnifying glass when I'm looking at something really, really tiny. I have a little tiny tape measure here that I got from one of our vendors. Again, for I think one side is metric and one side is standard size. So I tend to use that a lot more for air suspension, especially when it needs to do like I gotta do top of the rim up to the fender liner. That's typically not good. I have a couple of these that I actually just got off of I think a used fuel tank we had. These are really useful if you end up breaking the tabs. Like I said, when I was using my other pliers, you tend to crack the piece on here, or you break one of these. You could end up causing a leak, or these could eventually jiggle out and come loose and stuff like that. So I like having extras that I can use to kind of put a good hose here, a good hose on the other end, like a rubber hose attached to this, and that'll work. This just kind of holds my my stuff. I'm soldering things, but I don't really use that much. An extra little air blower. This is a piece of junk. I still have it on here. It's useful if you got to go take it out to a car because you don't want to bring your sockets and stuff, but otherwise I really don't use it much. I have a couple of these just BMW drain plugs. These plastic ones you have to replace, so I do like having a spare one or two in there. Bolt cutters, I keep those in there. My favorite thing to use bolt cutters for is actually just transmission lines. If I'm replacing transmission oil cooler lines, a lot like on GM vehicles, instead of having to wiggle those lines out, I'll just cut them at both ends and then just take piece by piece out and then just route the new one in. And that saves a lot of time, so that's my favorite thing to do with that. My power probe soldering iron had the igniter messed up on it, so I was actually taking it apart because I wanted to see if I could put my power probe soldering iron inside of my snap-on one, because I like the housing on the snap-on one, but I like the functions of this one a lot more, so I was going to try to combine those if I could. I think those are just bits. Let me see. I don't actually know what's in there. Oh, my feeler gauges. Yeah. I mean, I use those all the time, just for checking clearances and stuff. A lot of times too, like on Hondas, I think that's the most common thing I'm using them for. Then you use this tool to do valve adjustments on it, which I love doing. And if you have a picoscope, you can apparently, using the pressure transducers, see the effects of it, which I just learned in class. And I still have yet to do that, but I would really like to see it. And then I've got just some regular measurement tools and crap like that, just various odds and ends. I think there's a belt tension gauge, which I really don't use. And then some little timing holding stuff. Or I think it's actually for squeezing fuel lines and coolant lines and stuff like that, but I use it for holding timing belts. That's the most useful thing that I found from it. And then taking really, really tiny samples. That's if you're wanting to put it on your your refractometer, like DEF fluid, and put it on there to check it. That's why I have that in there. And then just kind of various rulers, Valcar removers. I just have kind of a bunch of random crap in here. Oh yeah, and these little carbide bits, which I happen to break one of them. These work really well. I used them for probably a couple of hours, maybe like 3 or 4 hours of cutting, and they still seem pretty sharp, so pretty impressed with those. Beside the one breaking, but I think that was my fault because I was kind of putting some pressure on it where it really didn't need to, and ended up making that not work, or breaking it. I think this is a holding tool for Toyotas. I'm not exactly sure what I remember buying that. I used to use that. I don't know. I actually don't know. I bought that a while ago. And this is this is the timing holding tool for Toyotas. I think it's for holding sprockets whenever you're doing belts. I used to use that a lot more frequently, but they came out with a universal tool. Actually, this might be the universal tool. And so I quit using that one as much because this one takes up a lot of space, especially because the teeth come up. I wish these like unscrewed. That would make it a little bit easier. These are stud remover kits. They actually work extremely well, especially if you broke studs off in the taking exhaust off on Ford vehicles. This tends to actually work really, really well. I still need to come in here and kind of label these to know how they work correctly. Mostly this one. This one is supposed to be basically like if you put 2 nuts and then clamp them together and then use the top one to remove it and it takes a stud out. Same concept, but that's basically just one tool that works on that. And then this kind of just pops in there and then you can tighten them opposing each other and do the same deal. But they work really well, but most especially for installing stuff. That's where they tend to shine the most. But removing them works very well as well. As you can see, I have a lot of problems with cases not shutting correctly. And then here I have my, I basically had, because I bought another Power Pro butane torch, I use this one to have kits for little wire wheels, these extractor bits. I have another set of these over in here. I have more, these little carbide cutting tools. Really useful for alignments too, if you need to move it in the housing up in the top. Some of them will tell you to do that, and that's what I've used that for. And then these are supposed to go on the top of extractor bits. Basically, it'll fit on there so you can put a 12-point wrench. I got those pretty recently, so I haven't had a chance to use them. I mean, that's a good thing that I haven't had to use them, because that means I haven't had to be extracting broken bolts, which is not one of my favorite things to do. It's a huge pain, so... yeah, that'll be the top 2 drawers, but I'll go over the rest here in just a sec.